Just moments ago, Prince William broke down in tears as Catherine was rushed to the hospital. Doctors moved fast after receiving terrifying news. What started as a routine check turned into a royal emergency. Now, the world is watching and asking, what happened to the Princess of Wales? And is she okay? A morning like any other. It was 6:45 a.m. on a cool Tuesday morning in October 2025 when Princess Catherine, still known fondly as Kate by the public, woke up at Adelaide Cottage, Windsor. The house was buzzing. Prince George, now 12 years old, was arguing about shoes. Princess Charlotte asked for help with her science homework. And Prince Louis, the youngest, spilled orange juice on the counter. It was chaos, but it was normal. Catherine smiled through it all, calm and maternal, as always. Then, just as she reached for the kettle, a sharp pain stabbed through her lower right side. It made her pause mid-movement. Her hand gripped the edge of the counter for balance. The discomfort passed in 30 seconds, but not before Prince William walked into the room and saw her freeze. "Again?" he asked softly. Catherine nodded with a faint smile. "It's nothing. Just a little ache." But William had seen this too many times over the past 8 weeks to brush it off again. He watched her closely as she made breakfast, wincing just slightly when she leaned over, moving slower than usual when she reached the top shelf. William had kept count. 4 instances of unexplained pain in just the last 2 months. This wasn't anxiety. This was real. He made the decision, and this time, she didn't fight it. A checkup was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. at St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington. As the school run finished and William left for royal briefings, Catherine quietly prepared for what she believed would be a short, routine visit. She picked a navy coat, tied her hair back, and kissed Louis on the forehead. No panic, no drama, just another errand. But as she stepped into the car, the warmth of Adelaide Cottage faded behind her. Because something inside her was already changing. The morning had begun like countless others before it, full of laughter, to-do lists, and familiar routines. But as Catherine drove toward St. Mary's Hospital, there was a new chill in the air. Not from the weather, but from something unspoken. A tightening in her chest, a whisper in the back of her mind. This wasn't just about ruling out a stomach bug. Deep down, even before the tests began, she sensed the truth. Something inside her wasn't right. And it was getting worse. The last-minute appointment that changed everything. At 10:27 a.m., Princess Catherine stepped through the private entrance of St. Mary's Hospital, flanked by only one royal protection officer. She wore her signature soft blue coat and a gentle smile. To the staff, she looked elegant and composed. But beneath that smile, she was carrying discomfort that had been haunting her since late August 2025. She still believed this would be a quick visit. In and out. Routine. Dr. Martin Aldridge, her personal physician of over 15 years, met her inside the royal suite. He noticed it instantly. She wasn't sitting quite right. Catherine kept shifting her weight away from her right side. When asked, she described the pain as intermittent, sometimes sharp, mostly dull. It had started around 6 weeks ago. She blamed stress, posture, even yoga. But Aldridge wasn't convinced. He ordered a full abdominal ultrasound and light imaging, just to be cautious. The technician began the scan at 10:58 a.m., expecting a straightforward appointment. Catherine remained relaxed, even asking about the technician's day. But something changed in the room. The scan was taking longer. The technician's eyes darted. The screen flickered more than once. At 11:22 a.m., the tech excused herself. Catherine watched her go, confused but calm. She texted William, "Taking a little longer, but I'm fine." But outside that room, the doctors weren't fine. Not at all. 11:40 a.m. Dr. Aldridge reviewed the preliminary scans and saw something abnormal. A shadow. A mass, just under the right ovary. Not very large. 2.3 centimeters, but dense and oddly shaped. He went still. "Let's do a contrast-enhanced MRI," he said to his colleague. Meanwhile, Catherine sat alone, unaware that the appointment had already shifted into emergency territory. Her 30-minute checkup had turned into something altogether different. Doctors no longer whispered about possibilities, they were acting on alarms. The tone in the hospital changed. What began as a preventative scan had now escalated into deeper testing, urgent meetings, and hushed voices in the corridor. Catherine hadn't yet been told what they'd found, but the tension had entered the room like a fog. She was no longer just a patient. She was the Princess of Wales, and her body had just revealed a secret that couldn't be ignored any longer. A scan that should have been nothing. At 12:05 p.m., Nurse Emma Chen, a junior staffer only 8 months into her rotation, walked into the imaging lab to process data. A new MRI file from the Princess's session was flagged "Abnormal, immediate review." Emma opened it. Her training told her to pass it on, but her instincts wouldn't let her ignore what she saw. A second mass, slightly deeper, not previously identified. 2.9 centimeters, irregular shape, potential vascular involvement. Emma froze. This wasn't routine. She carefully saved the file, printed a duplicate, and contacted Dr. Aldridge. "There's something more," she said, voice shaky. Within 90 seconds, Aldridge and a specialist radiologist were at the station reviewing the scan. The room went quiet. "Get another scan. Full contrast. Now." They knew Catherine's life might depend on what they were seeing. Back in her room, Catherine scrolled through her calendar. She had a meeting in 2 hours with a children's health initiative. She still believed she'd make it. The nurse who returned didn't say much, just that the doctor needed a few more images. Catherine nodded. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "Just being thorough," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice calm. But the fear was now thick in the air. By 12:45 p.m., the internal communication network had flagged the case with a Priority 1 notice. Senior specialists were arriving. A surgical consultant was looped in by text. Catherine still didn't know, but outside her door, her entire medical future had already changed course. A young nurse's chilling discovery. By 1:03 p.m., Nurse Emma Chen was back at her desk. She thought her part was done, but something in the last scan still bothered her, an odd contrast in the surrounding tissue. On a hunch, she cross-referenced Catherine's file with a hormonal report from her early September 2025 wellness check. Levels weren't adding up. The pattern suggested something more systemic, something aggressive. Emma froze. She had to speak now or regret it forever. Emma quietly called Dr. Aldridge again. "You need to look at this last scan, sir, and her hormone levels from 6 weeks ago." She could hear her own voice shaking. Aldridge, now visibly tense, stepped away from a meeting with 2 specialists and joined her. Within 2 minutes, he saw it too, a sign the growth might be part of a larger metabolic disturbance. That changed everything. This was no longer about a benign cyst or minor infection. It pointed to a more serious internal disorder, possibly oncological. Inside her room, Catherine sipped water and read from a folder about a 2025 UN Health Summit she'd planned to attend next month. She had no idea that just 40 feet down the hallway, the entire medical staff was scrambling to confirm a life-altering suspicion. Blood tests were reordered. Specialists from Oxford Medical Center were contacted. What had begun as a wellness visit was now becoming a cross-departmental crisis. By 1:20 p.m., Emma passed Dr. Aldridge a final printed report. She tried to keep her face calm, but inside, she was panicking. Catherine was still waiting for answers. She didn't know that 3 different doctors now believed she might be facing the beginning stages of a rare, possibly fast-moving condition. And the clock had already started ticking. By now, it was no longer a mystery to the medical team. Something serious had taken hold inside Catherine's body, and it had been quietly growing for weeks. But while doctors ran tests and double-checked data, the princess still hadn't been told. She was waiting, wondering, smiling. That unbearable moment, the one between knowing and not knowing, was coming to an end. Because what was once caution was now confirmation, and the truth couldn't wait any longer. Not for her, not for William. William gets the call. At 1:36 p.m., Prince William was in a private meeting at Kensington Palace, reviewing updates on mental health initiatives when his encrypted phone buzzed twice. He checked the screen. Dr. Aldridge, urgent. He stepped out, expecting an update. What he got instead shattered his focus. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. "You need to come to St. Mary's Hospital immediately. There are findings we didn't expect." William didn't ask for details. He simply replied, "I'm on my way." His car left the gates of Kensington Palace by 1:42 p.m. Sirens off, but urgency high. As he drove through the streets of London, his mind raced. Every quiet complaint Catherine had made over the last 2 months replayed. Every time she said she was tired. Every time she insisted it was nothing. Every time he believed her, or wanted to. By 2:05 p.m., he walked into the royal suite at the hospital. The staff stood in silence. Dr. Aldridge was waiting outside the room. "We've identified 2 growths, possibly more. It's early, but this could be serious." William didn't speak. He nodded once and opened the door. There was Catherine, still in a hospital gown, seated near the window, pretending to read a magazine. She looked up, saw his face, and knew. This was no routine check. He crossed the room, took her hand, and sat down beside her. For the first time in 14 years of marriage, William didn't know what to say. He just held her. She leaned into him and whispered, "What's happening, Will?" He didn't answer, because the truth hadn't yet been spoken aloud, not to her. The silence between them said everything. William had walked into that room expecting reassurance. Instead, he found the woman he loved teetering on the edge of a diagnosis no royal protocol could prepare him for. The doctors were ready. The results were in. And now there was no time left for delay. Catherine needed answers. And she wanted them now. Not softened, not filtered, not dressed up in titles. Just the truth. And that truth was about to hit like a wave.
Tell me the truth!
At 2:20 p.m., Dr. Aldridge re-entered the suite. Catherine sat upright, her hand in William's. She saw the look in his eyes and the folder in his hands. That was all she needed. "Don't ease me into it," she said quietly. "Just tell me what's wrong." The room stilled. William squeezed her hand tighter. Aldridge sat down. "There are 2 growths, one 2.3 centimeters, 2.9 centimeters. They're in a sensitive area near your lower abdomen. We've ruled out infection." Catherine nodded. "And?" Aldridge hesitated, then continued. "We suspect a possible early-stage malignancy. It's not confirmed, but it's serious. The scans show irregular vascular patterns and hormonal fluctuations consistent with more than just cysts." The words hung heavy in the air. Catherine blinked slowly. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. "It could be," he replied. "But we caught it early. We think." That single phrase, "we think," changed the room. William asked a string of rapid questions. "Is it operable? Can it spread? What's the risk?" Dr. Aldridge answered each, carefully but clearly. Yes, it was operable. No confirmed metastasis yet. The risks were there, but treatment was possible and urgent. Catherine asked only one question. "Will I be able to care for my children?" Aldridge paused, then answered, "Yes, but only if we move now." By 2:45 p.m., the Royal Health Team had initiated an accelerated treatment protocol. Catherine would remain at St. Mary's overnight. Surgery was discussed. Consultations began. The next 72 hours would determine everything. William arrives. By 3:15 p.m., the hallway outside Catherine's room had cleared. Specialists were rotating in and out, planning the next steps. Inside, it was quiet. William stood near the window, arms crossed, trying to steady his breathing. He hadn't spoken much since the diagnosis. 19 years of knowing her, and he had never seen her look so fragile. He was the future King of England, but in this moment, he felt powerless. Catherine reached out and took his hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were steady. "You don't have to be strong for me," she said gently. That broke him. For the first time since his wedding day in 2011, William let tears fall in front of her. He pressed his forehead against hers and whispered, "I should have pushed sooner. I should have made you go weeks ago." She smiled, even now. "You were just trying to let me be me." A nurse entered briefly at 3:30 p.m., delivering an updated file from the Oxford specialists. The growths appeared contained, but were located dangerously close to nerves that controlled lower body mobility. If surgery wasn't done with precision, recovery could be long and unpredictable. William listened silently. Catherine simply asked, "How soon?" The nurse replied, "The team wants to operate by Friday morning, latest. That's 2 days." William remained with her for the next 4 hours. They didn't speak much, just held hands. Occasionally, they laughed about nothing. It was how they had always been. But behind the quiet moments, both of them knew. Their lives had just split into 2 timelines, before this moment and after. As twilight descended over St. Mary's Hospital, the royal family's strongest couple sat in silence, breathing through their fears. But even as they faced the hardest truth together, the day was far from done. Doctors were still analyzing results, comparing scans, and consulting with international colleagues. Catherine had been told everything, almost, because one final scan remained under review, and it held a detail so delicate, even William hadn't been told. Not yet, and certainly not while she was still awake. The diagnosis no one expected. By 7:10 p.m., Dr. Aldridge was reviewing the latest scan in his office with Dr. Fiona Blake, a neurologist from Oxford University Medical Hospital. The contrast imaging revealed more than previously assumed. A small third cluster, just 1.1 centimeters, appeared near a major nerve bundle. It wasn't confirmed as malignant, but it wasn't harmless either. "It's a wild card," Blake said. This could either disappear or define the outcome. The challenge? Telling Catherine now would do more harm than good. The team decided to wait until Thursday morning, once the biopsy results came in. They needed more certainty before delivering more fear. Still, they documented everything and updated the royal medical file. William had already been told about 2 masses. This third one would change the conversation entirely. But for now, silence was chosen. Back in her room, Catherine was finally asleep by 8:05 p.m. Her heart monitor beeped steadily, her breathing calm. William stood over her, watching. This was the woman who had stood at his side through scandal, loss, royal pressure, and 3 childbirths. Now she was the one in crisis, and he couldn't protect her from it. His tears returned, but this time he turned away so she wouldn't see. He stepped out of the room at 8:15 p.m., asking for updates. When the nurses hesitated, he sensed it. "There's something else, isn't there?" he asked. But the staff didn't speak. Dr. Aldridge stepped in and gently said, "We're just waiting on one last confirmation. I promise, you'll be the first to know." William nodded, but the pit in his stomach had already returned. What do you do when you know your world has already changed, but might still change again? William walked the halls of the hospital with that thought haunting him. Every update brought answers, but also more questions. Catherine was safe for now, but safe didn't mean certain. And deep within the hospital's secured records, a third unknown was waiting. Waiting for a name, a label, a consequence. Waiting to become part of the truth William would eventually have to hear and share. A quiet breakdown behind hospital doors. By 9:30 p.m., most of the hospital wing was quiet. Only a few lights remained on in the royal suite. Catherine slept, her IV gently dripping. William sat in the visitor's chair by the window, phone in hand, but unread. Messages from aides, family members, and royal staff lit up the screen. But he didn't respond. His mind had stopped somewhere around 3 p.m., frozen in the moment the word malignancy was said aloud. He thought about their last normal moment, breakfast at 6:45 a.m., Louis laughing with cereal on his chin, Catherine pretending not to wince from pain. She had been hurting for weeks, and he hadn't pushed harder. The guilt stung. For a man trained to lead, to protect, to endure, it was unbearable to feel so helpless. William's breath grew shallow, and the first sob hit before he could stop it. A nurse entered quietly and paused. She didn't speak, just placed a new blanket over his shoulders and left. At 10:10 p.m., Catherine stirred. "Will?" she called softly. He wiped his face, crossed the room, and took her hand. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just pulled his arm around her and rested her head against his chest. "Still here?" she whispered. "Always," he replied. In that moment, there were no titles, no duties, no crown. Just 2 people, broken but together, holding on to whatever came next. They were still standing, but just barely. What had begun as a day of routine turned into a night of reckoning. But it wasn't over. Catherine's surgery was still 2 days away. Her condition wasn't stable, and that final unknown, the third mass, remained untold. The world outside the hospital had no idea what was unfolding behind its stone walls. But inside, history was already being rewritten, quietly, painfully, moment by moment. But one scan remains unspoken. At 11:20 p.m. in the basement-level records lab of St. Mary's Hospital, two consultants sat in silence. The scan nurse Emma flagged earlier had now been reviewed by three senior doctors. The verdict? It needed surgical inspection. This third mass, though small, was pressing against a nerve cluster that could affect Catherine's mobility, or worse, her long-term organ function. They debated whether to tell William immediately, but it was late. Catherine was resting, and without full confirmation, they feared adding more distress. The decision was made. Wait until Thursday at 8 a.m. once biopsy results returned. Meanwhile, the hospital's security team encrypted all royal files and flagged the case as Level 3 confidential. This wasn't just a health crisis, it was now a full-scale royal operation. Staff were rotated to prevent leaks. Press officers were put on standby. Only 12 individuals in the entire facility had access to Catherine's updated file. At midnight, the wing finally fell quiet. Catherine slept. William sat beside her, drifting in and out of thought. Outside, the lights of London flickered across the Thames. No announcements had been made, no statements prepared. But the real story had already begun. A diagnosis, a decision, and a secret still waiting in the shadows.